Alvin Kamara has quickly established himself as one of the best running backs and most dangerous playmakers at any position in the league. In just 2 years, he's tallied over 1,600 rushing yards to go along with over 1,500 receiving yards, the most of any running back in history over their first 2 years aside from Herschel Walker, helping to completely redefine the running back position with his pass-catching versatility. Oh, and that's not mentioning the absolutely absurd 31 touchdowns that he's put up over that time. The man is unstoppable, and one of the first 5 names that any NFL fan should think of when asked about the best running backs in the game. But that definitely wasn't always the case. In fact, there were 4 players at his own position that were drafted before Kamara in 2017. Let's look at those guys and how their careers have stacked up against the Saints stud. First off, a quick look at his college numbers might explain some of why Kamara was picked so late for his talent level, as the guy only received a combined 210 carries over his 2 seasons playing at Tennessee. But don't get it twisted. No, he didn't get the ball a ton over his college career, but every time he did touch it, he was electric, averaging more than 6 yards a carry over his career and flashing his superstar receiving abilities along the way, with 77 catches in his 2 seasons. The problem was, that impressive efficiency and versatility didn't answer the biggest question about Kamara that came with his low carry numbers, which was whether the small, 5'10", 210-pound prospect would be able to become a true 3-down feature back in the NFL. Kamara also didn't help answer those questions at the combine, after running only a 4.56 in the 40-yard dash. Respectable for sure, but not an amazing look for a player that relied mostly on his speed and quickness. Being honest, this was all fair criticism, especially when you look at some of the other running backs in the class, who, at the time, seemed to fit the prototype of what you want in a franchise back, which definitely included the first running back taken off the board in 2017. Leonard Fournette. The big bruiser from LSU was picked 4th overall by Jacksonville after lighting it up as a 3-year starter for the Tigers, and straight up looking like a can't-miss star for the next level. I mean, to put things in perspective, remember how Alvin Kamara had 210 carries in his career? Well, Fournette had 300 carries in just his sophomore season of college, on his way to scoring 23 touchdowns and just barely falling short of 2,000 rushing yards. But in the NFL, it's been a slightly different story. While Fournette's definitely shown flashes of what he's able to do in college, inefficient running and missed games have held the top pick back from reaching the level of dominance that many expected, especially after seeing what Zeke Elliott was able to do after he was also picked number 4 just a year prior. In 2 seasons, Fournette's played just 21 of a possible 32 games, while combining for less than 1,500 yards on under 3.7 yards a carry. In comparison, Kamara's been at 5.1 yards a carry through 31 games. Now don't get me wrong, Leonard Fournette is far from a bad running back. I mean, dude still put up 1,000 yards in his rookie season, and he definitely hasn't had a lot of help, with Blake Bortles behind center for almost his entire career so far. But still, even then, for a guy who was picked so high and who's never been the most dangerous weapon in the passing game, I would have expected his rushing numbers to be a lot better than they have been. I mean, look at Saquon. So all in all, I know it's early, but at least up to this point, Fournette probably hasn't even been a top 3 running back in his draft class. But I think that says more about the other guys than it says about Fournette, including this next player, and that's Christian McCaffrey, who was taken just a few spots later at pick 8 by the Carolina Panthers. Now coming out of college, he also faced a lot of questions about his size, but I think it's safe to say his production spoke for itself. As good of a receiver as Kamara was in college, McCaffrey was even better, catching 82 balls over his last 2 seasons at Stanford and picking up a Heisman along the way. And, unlike Leonard Fournette, he's only continued to impress in the pros. As a rookie, even with having a slow season on the ground, McCaffrey balanced it out by immediately becoming a threat in the passing game, with almost 700 receiving yards on 80 catches that year. Then, he turned it to another level his second year, breaking 1,000 for the season on 5 yards a carry, while adding almost 900 yards through the air on over 100 catches. I mean, this guy's damn near putting up Pro Bowl receiver numbers, and that's not even his main position. McCaffrey has definitely been one of the top 2 or 3 running backs of the class so far, and doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. I mean, listen, as good as Kamara's been so far for the Saints, I honestly think the Panthers wouldn't change a thing about the selection, even if they had the chance. Now you can argue whether you think Christian or Alvin is the better player. There's definitely a case for both sides. But you definitely can't debate just how good of a fit McCaffrey's been for Carolina and Cam Newton. Alright, to find the next guy, we have to jump down all the way to the second round. The 41st pick, Dalvin Cook. Now, it's still tough for me to decide whether or not Dalvin Cook has proven himself worthy of this pick. I mean, the guy's shown up and performed well in almost every game he's played so far. But the catch is, he's only played 15 games. Remember, that's 15 games through 2 seasons. And anybody who watched the Vikings play last season knows that he wasn't even 100% healthy for some of those games that he did play. Now, Dalvin Cook was absolutely electric in college at Florida State, and he's shown flashes of that ability in the NFL. But so far, he just hasn't answered any questions about his durability. In fact, he's only raised more of them. Cook's really an interesting case, because in a lot of ways, he's really just sort of another version of Alvin Kamara. A shifty, hard to bring down pass catching back who makes up for his lack of size with world-class elusiveness. There's really only one big difference. But of course, it's one of, if not the most important ability in any sport. And that's availability. Unfortunately for Vikings fans, Dalvin Cook just hasn't been lucky enough to stay on the field. Now there's still obviously time to change that narrative, but it needs to start sooner rather than later for the Minnesota back. And that brings us to the last running back pick before Kamara. The guy who would have been picked even higher if not for some big mistakes that he made. Of course, I'm talking about Bengals running back Joe Mixon, who was picked in the second round at 48th overall. After redshirting his freshman year because of the assault charge against him, Mixon strung together 2 impressive seasons at Oklahoma, highlighted by his redshirt sophomore year when he put up close to 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns on a jaw-dropping 6.8 yards a carry on the ground, along with 538 yards and 5 scores through the air on 37 catches. Going into the draft, Mixon was looked at across the league as a first-round talent, which I think you could say he's mostly lived up to in his 2 years in the league. After splitting carries with Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard as a rookie, and struggling a bit with efficiency, gaining only 3.5 yards a carry on the year, Mixon flipped a switch in his second season. With the backfield all to himself, he proved his ability to be a full-time workhorse back, and reminded fans not to forget about him when discussing the best running backs from the 2017 draft class, breaking 1,100 yards with 8 touchdowns on a very solid and much improved 4.9 yards a carry his second season. Oh, and add on about 300 receiving yards on 43 catches. Joe Mixon looks well on his way to being worth the mid-second round selection that he was taken at. But I think it's fair to say at this moment at least that the Bengals and the Vikings the pick before may have missed the mark with their running back selections, passing up on Alvin Kamara and, fun fact, also passing up on Kareem Hunt, who I haven't mentioned yet, but was the very next running back taken after Kamara, and also has the case for being the best running back in the class through 2 seasons. Now, that might change after having his own assault incident and now being on the Browns, but I'm pretty confident he'll be able to regain form on that rising Cleveland squad. With all that said, I think it's definitely important to note again that all of these players obviously didn't enter the league with the same situations. No one else was blessed to play with a surefire Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees like Alvin Kamara was, and no one else had the chance to play for an offensive mastermind right away in Andy Reid like Kareem Hunt was. As talented as those 2 guys are, I don't think it's a coincidence that they've been 2 of the most successful backs from the class, because let's keep it real, they've probably had the best situations to succeed. Point is, I really don't think any of these teams should be totally kicking themselves over their picks. Sure, Fournette and Dalvin Cook haven't been the players we expected, but I think it's still too early to give those guys any bust labels. And by the way, the fact that Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook are considered the disappointments of the draft shows you just how good the 2017 class was for running backs. That's all I got for this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Till next time, keep ballin', fellas. I'm out.